Hey, welcome to lesson 5 in this 5-lesson series called The Basics. We're going to tie a Parachute Adams dry fly. I've got a size 16 dry fly hook and some 8/0 black uni. So let's tie in right behind the eye. We'll run our thread about a third of the way down the hook. Stop. That'll be our tie-in point for our post. I like to use white calf tail for a number of reasons. First being it's really buoyant. I like my dries to float high and for as long as possible without any floating required. And there's also a durability issue. A lot of guys will tie with Antron. The problem with Antron is it's not super buoyant, and with a little bit of use it mashes down right on top of your hackle, so kind of like a top of a mushroom sitting on top of those fibers, which isn't that helpful. So I've got about a 2.5 inch length of white calf tail, and I'm going to tie this in by the tips, with the tips facing rearward, like so. So most of that 2 inches is going to extend past the eye of the hook. I'm doing this for a reason. The tips naturally thin, so these fibers are a little bit thicker. And the other good thing about this calf tail is that when we trim it, it's going to give us a nice buoyant underbody, so it's going to help the fly float. We're going to trim it on an angle, and that angle will also give us the taper that we want for our body. So it serves a bunch of purposes that I've found the synthetics just don't cover, and they don't work as well. So I'm going to pull these butt end fibers upward, and I'm going to trim this on a fairly steep angle, and you can see that tapers the material automatically. And then you can just come in if you want to massage that a little bit. I've got 2 saddle hackles here, one in grizzly, one in brown, and I'm going to select about a dozen fibers from each. Pull those fibers 90 degrees to the main stem, and the tips should align fairly well. I did a bad job with that, so let's try it again. See if we can keep these together. There we go. These should be roughly the length of the shank of the hook. That's just about right. Just want to tie those in. Yep, those look good. Same thing, I'm going to come over to my brown saddle hackle and select another dozen or so fibers from that. Line those tips up, tie them right on top of that grizzly. And then I'm going to bring my thread to the rear just before the bend of the hook will stop. And lift these fibers up, and I'll put one wrap thread underneath them. That'll help keep them up. I want to trim these butt ends, and I do that. I don't trim them completely. I trim them so that they stop right here where we're going to lift up our posts. And you'll see it gives us just about a perfect taper for the body. So you do that. And then I'm just going to run the thread to the rear. This next step is purely optional. I like a little segmentation on the abdomen, so I'm going to take a 3-inch piece of 6/0 black uni, Tie this in. Most of the flies I see sold today don't have a rib, so it's up to you. I like having a rib. I've got some super fine dry fly dubbing, which is just about the easiest thing in the world to dub with. It's really nice stuff, perfect for smaller flies specifically. You can use other materials. This is just really nice stuff. Originally the fly was tied with muskrat, I think. And we're just going to dub a really nice thin noodle. We have most of the taper that we want with our super buoyant calf tail underbody. So this fly, I guarantee you, will outfloat anything that you can buy. And it will outfloat pretty much anything that you tie in a different manner, because most patterns don't keep that calf tail. They get rid of it. They cut it really short, and they don't use it as an underbody, which I think is a waste. So you just wrap this forward. You get a really nice tapered abdomen. Okay? I'm just going to come over to my rib material and rib this forward like so. Even wraps. You get up to front, just jump that thread in front of the post, tie it off. It's not cooperating here. There we go. Take our scissors and trim that out. Now you see, most often this will be tied with the feathers, the hackle, the dry fly hackle tied in when you tie in the post. The only problem with that is then you're dealing with two feathers the whole time that you're tying your fly, and I guarantee you they will get in the way. So you'll have these two nice dry fly hackles that are kind of floppy, and every time you bring your thread over they're getting in the way, etc. So this just avoids that problem. I'm going to bring these fibers 90 degrees to the stem and pull about 1/2 inch worth off the butt end of the feather, so that main stem is showing and bare. Okay, then we'll just tie that in. You want to leave some of that bare stem behind the post, so that when we lift the post up and we tie these hackles into it, we're not tying around hackle fibers, we're just tying around that bare stem. I'm going to come over to my beautiful brown hackle, do the same thing. Pull those fibers 90 degrees to the main stem and then just zip them off. So we get a bare main shaft. That feather, like so. Again, we're going to tie in front, but we're going to leave some of that bare shaft behind the post. Trim out the butt end, like so. Just going to tie that down. Now I'm just going to create a little bit of a thread dam, a little bit more substantial in front of this post. That's going to help lift it 90 degrees, which is what we want. Okay, so now that's standing up straight. We're going to lift these two hackle feathers straight up. We're just going to wrap around the base, and that's going to join these three fibers. And with a little practice, you'll be able to wind this post like so without having to hold on to it, but when you get started, helps to just hold on to it. And I'm just going to create a little bit more of a foundation here down at the bottom, give it a little bit more support. Right up underneath that post and around the base. It's good. Got our hackles tied in, got our post. Going to come back to our dubbing. Take 1 or 2 wraps behind that post, and then we can form a head. I always like to, you'll see me turning the vise and taking a look underneath. I always like to check the profile of the fly from top and bottom. The fish sees it from the bottom. Make sure it's what I want. Looks pretty good. Once I've got my head where I want it, I'm just going to take these 2 hackles and start to wrap them down the post. 1 wrap under the other. You can wrap them individually or together. I like to wrap them together. Make a half wrap when you're happy, when you've got the amount of hackle you want. Just pull those fibers back, drop some thread right over both of those feathers, and lift them back. Put a couple wraps of thread in front of them, and they'll be well tied in at that point. I like to just come in with our scissors, trim those main stems out, and if you have any stragglers, you can clean those up too. Be careful not to cut your thread, which is pretty easy to do. Okay. Now we can form a little bit of a head. Grab our whip finish tool. Whip finish. Trim out our thread. Going to put some head cement on those wraps, and I don't want to get it on the hackle or the dubbing, so I'm just going to come in, hold all this back right over the eye, keeps it off the dubbing, keeps it off the hackle, gets all the thread. Got 1 fiber there don't like. Trim that out. Take a pin, clear that eye, which also gives the head cement a moment to dry. Now, I'm intentionally a little rough with the post and the hackle, pulling them back like that. It's a bit of a litmus test. If you've tied your hackle in well, you won't see any white gaps. You won't see any of the posts showing through. If you haven't, you will, and what that means is there's a likelihood that your hackle, when you trim this, can slide off the top, because you haven't wrapped it well. So I'm intentionally a little rough when I pull that back. Just is a final okay as far as a check, making sure that I've done a good job wrapping that hackle. And then I'm going to pull it forward. We'll make ourselves presentable here because these get mashed a little bit. And what you want is it should be a nice even profile underneath and on top. Of course the fish is going to see it underneath, but there shouldn't be any gaps. It should be a nice, fairly symmetric circle around that post. So I always like to check it. Now all we need to do, come over to our scissors, trim our post, and you can mess with the post as far as the height that you want. If you're concerned about the profile, i.e. not using the tips, but using the more buoyant, thicker part of the calf tail, you can taper this. You can also mix in some gray, which makes it a little less visible. So that's up to you. I don't feel like I ever get many rejections, so I don't think the post has ever been a problem. And if you use Antron, you're going to have a straight cut across anyway. So I hope you found this lesson useful, valuable, enjoyable. This is a great fly to have in your box, and it's the structure for basically any parachute that you want to tie. So just change the body color, change the hackle, and you'll have a PMD, or you can have a rusty spinner, or a number of other fly patterns just by changing the dubbing a little bit and the hackle. So I'm going to be posting some more advanced lessons. I hope this series was helpful. I hope it put 5 really good flies in your box so that you can get out there with flies that you've tied and go have some fun. So thanks a lot, and I'll catch you in the future.